The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's webinar where Meredith Zachritz is going to be showing you our brand new mobile Journyx Mobile 12 or Journyx 12 mobile app, I should say. It is a brand new interface, brand new design, brand new user experience. We're really excited about it. And I'd also like to apologize. I know everyone else was excited about it last week, but unfortunately, tech happens sometimes, and due to an outage with our webinar provider, we had to reschedule it to this week. So thank you very much for bearing with us on that and for re-registering and coming back to take a look at what Mobile 12 has to offer. We will have a Q&A at the end, and this is being recorded, and the recording will be sent out to everyone afterwards, and we're going to post it in the user community as well. Without further ado, I will go ahead and turn things over to Meredith.
Thank you, Carrie. Let's start out by just taking a quick look at what we're going to see today and kind of what's been going on with this Mobile 12 effort. Hopefully you guys have seen kind of what we're doing with Journyx 12 in general. We have our big release with the user experience overhaul for Journyx 12 on our server app, and our mobile effort was coordinated with the effort so that we had a user experience that was consistent from server to mobile. In addition to the user experience overhaul, our previous mobile app was based on a platform and technology that was not working well for us, that was not sufficiently flexible or robust. And so at the same time, we took this opportunity to rebuild the apps and make separate apps that are native to their platform. So the iOS app is built, Swift on the iOS platform, and Android same, and Java on the Android platform. And so what our hope there is that we will have more flexibility to build out the UIs to work well for what you want to do, and also deliver things faster and in a higher quality fashion. So we did change the technology in addition to the user interface overhaul. So today what we'll be looking at are some of the basic functionality that you have in the mobile app: time and expense entry, attachments, data validation, and the ability to submit your sheets for approval, and then finally manage your approvals. And so that's where we start with this new app, and then of course we'll be building we have a roadmap, and we'll be building new features in as you guys give us feedback on what it is that's most important to you. So let's go ahead and get started in the app. So we'll start out by just actually logging in. As you can see here, it has a new look and feel if you were familiar with the old app. You do have to log in the first time that you use it. After that, your site, your Journyx site, will be remembered. We do have some shortcuts that are kind of cool. For example, if you're in the Journyx cloud, all you have to do is type in your site name, that first part of your site. You don't have to type in the full URL to get started. And so we'll go ahead and type in. I do have something on the cloud here, so I'll just type in my site name right here, see if I can type. There we go. And hit next. Now, this mobile app does support single sign-on, Azure single sign-on. So if you're using Azure SSO, instead of seeing this login information, you will be forwarded to the screens that you're used to seeing when logging in, for example, through your Office 365 account. So we do support that. If you aren't set up for single sign-on, then you will see the standard login that you see here. And we'll go ahead and log in. We're going to log in today as somebody who enters time and expense as well as does approval, so that we can see all of this under one user. But of course, as is always the case, you're going to see what you have access to in the Journyx system and nothing else. So one of the things that this app includes is the ability to okay, ability to pick a home screen. And this may not mean a whole lot to you when you first get started, but when you start out, it'll ask you, well, do you want to start by looking at time? Do you want to look at a basic dashboard? There's notifications. Some of these features are still kind of basic, and we'll take a look at those. But you can always change this over time, or the users can always go back and pick a different home screen. We're going to go ahead and pick our kind of summary of time and save and continue. And so we start on today's date on an activity screen that shows you what time you've logged for this week. You could also start, like I said, on the dashboard, and we'll just go ahead and take a look at some of these other screens. There's a navigation menu at the bottom. It kind of has all of your primary screens. And so we have a dashboard that gives you a summary of what you've done. And if you're a manager, it also gives you access to approvals. We'll be building this out. Right now it's pretty basic, but we'll be building this out to include more information. We saw the activity that summarizes your time or your expenses. Then we have notifications, which right now is just pretty much limited to, do you have some past timesheets that haven't been submitted? Do you have approvals that need approving? These will get smarter over time, and we are actually building out some new notification features in the server app as well, and so we'll tie those together with mobile. And then there's a settings area where you can access help, and of course, as I said, you can go reset that home screen. So we'll change that to dashboard. We'll close out the app. And there we go. It defaults to your dashboard. So those are the basic choices at the high level for the menu. But of course, the primary reason most people have this app is that big plus button right down there that says add. Most of the time, people are coming in and they just want to get their time added quickly. Maybe they're in the airport, maybe they're on a client site, whatever the case may be. And so you have the plus button front and center that allows you to add time or expenses quickly. It defaults to today's date, but of course you can pick other dates. You can scroll to a previous period if you need to get caught up on your time. Can return to today's date with that calendar up in the corner. So, like I said, so the most common use case is generally, I've just finished something, I've just finished my day, whatever the case may be, and I want to get my time entered. So I click on Project, Get Started, and I have access to my favorites. These are your memorized entries in the server app. So I can very quickly and easily get started by just picking a favorite and entering time. So we'll do that. Click on the time. As you can see here, I can enter time in decimal or colon format. So I can do 2.5 here and save. And I get confirmation that my entry was saved. And I can go back and view that entry and edit that entry at any time right there. Now I can also do an open entry. So if I don't want to use a favorite, I need to create something new. I can pick a project and I'll see all of my relevant choices if I only have one choice in one of these areas. For example, we just skipped right on through pay type to bill type. That means I only had one valid pay type and I don't need to pick it. So, to the extent that you have your dependencies set up to where there are single choices in some of these fields, the user isn't going to have to pick that single choice. They just skip right on through to the ones that have multiple selections. So it, again, makes it nice and efficient. This time we'll do colon entry. And again, I get a confirmation. And I can still view details and edit as necessary. Now, one thing that I want to point out here, in addition to favorites, which are based on memorized entries, we also have some recent entries available for use. So if I go to Friday, I'm going to see some 0-hour entries, and what those are the entries that I just created today. They don't have any hours tracked for Friday, but what I can, instead of going through the create new entry, I can simply click on one of these and add some time for Friday underneath it. And so essentially reuse it. We will be asking for feedback on, how you like essentially the way these recent entries are presented in the UI. This was our first take based on the way some other applications do things. But if you would prefer to have them accessible, separately, perhaps not in the list for the day, that's something that we'd love to hear more about. But essentially, we want you to be able to get your time entered quickly, and so if you work the same things throughout the week, you can simply access those entries again via the various days via the view details, which allows you to edit and delete your entries. So one of the other things that you'll want to be able to do after you've gotten your time entered is, of course, submit your sheets. And you can see some of the alerts up in the upper right hand corner. The clock with the alert allows you to view your sheets for submission. And so I can take a look at that sheet. That doesn't look quite complete, but that one looks pretty good. And so I'm going to go ahead and submit my timesheet. It will confirm it, tell me how many projects I logged time to. In this case, it was only one for the entire week. Now I could go back and try this sheet as well. But in this case, we have some data validation, as I mentioned, some rules that enforce a minimum of 40 hours in a week. So obviously, this sheet submission should not work. And we see that we can see the error, that it does not. And it explains, it shows your custom error message why you aren't able to submit that sheet. And if you have that in your text, it will tell the end user how to correct it, just like you would see in the browser when the same thing occurs. So we can click done and get out of there, and then of course I can scroll back to add more time to the sheet if I need to get my 40 hours in. Now we can also do expenses if your users have the ability to do so. And so I can go back and look at, for example, what I've already logged. I see my little paperclip, which means that I have an attachment here, so I can look at it there. I can also create new expenses, so I'll click on that calendar to return to today. I can continue logging to the same entry that I used on Monday, or I can create a new one. And just like we saw with time, I can either pick a favorite or I can add something new. And these are all the usual choices that you would have set up for your end users. Just like time, if there are certain fields here that only have one valid choice, or if they're hidden, you won't see them at all as you go through this wizard to create your entry. So we enter our time, and we'll go ahead and attach. I can pick something from my gallery, or you can see my messy desk, or I can take a picture of something on my desk. So a picture of a receipt or a picture that I already have saved to my photos on my device. And then I can save the entry. Details. And there we have it. Just like time, I can submit my expense sheets, assuming I have an approval plan assigned to me to do so. There will be alerts for the number of sheets that you have open, for expense. But of course, if you don't have a requirement to submit every week, then that won't be necessary. But we do let people know that they have sheets available for submission under both time and expense. So those two icons up at the top, the clock for time and the $ for expense, allows you to access the sheet submission. So that pretty well covers what the end users do with time and expense. We'll go ahead now and move on to our manager approvals. And I showed you those briefly, the queues on the dashboard. This does apply only to managers who are named approvers in approval plans. So if you are an administrator and you just see everybody's approvals, but you aren't actually a named approver in the plan, then you will not be able to do approvals in the mobile app at this time. These are specifically people who are regular approvers who are designated as approvers in time and expense plans. So that's something important to know, and that's the way things were prior to this app as well in the current mobile app. And this is primarily because as a super approver, you could have access to really like thousands of approvals. So should that be something of interest to you guys, to allow super approvers, people who aren't the named essentially approval override folks, to be able to access queues, then we can discuss how to essentially deliver that in smaller chunks, perhaps where you search for something, for example, or only show X number of sheets or X amount of time. But that's sort of what we'd have to do to offer that kind of access. But these are limited to the named regular approvers. And of course, like I said, you can see the queues. If there's nothing in the queue, then you won't see the approval queues. They're there when there's actually something to approve. And I can view the sheets by simply sliding sideways. I can see attachments, and I have the option to approve and reject. Let's see, I think there's one sheet. There we go. This one looks like a good one to reject. There's no time. Just like you would have in the browser, you give a reason, and then it confirms that the sheet is rejected. Likewise, I can approve a sheet. Maybe we won't approve that one. Let's find a better one. I can approve a timesheet, and it will confirm that it's approved. And then, of course, when I'm finished, my queue will reflect that some of these sheets dropped out, or the queue will go away altogether if I complete all of my sheets. Expense is very much like time. I can also click through and view the details for a specific day. So go here. Time has that same capability. So we'll approve the sheet. I'm going to get information. Approve the other sheet. And then, as you can see, I no longer have an expense queue because I approved everything in that queue. So that covers all of the high-level functionality. I would like to go ahead and show you guys what it looks like in Android. You may have noticed that I am doing this right now on an iOS device. So let's switch to Android, which is just slightly different, given that the platform is slightly different as well. There we go. So you can see again, activity on Android, dashboard on Android, manager approvals. So just slightly different based on standard Android user interface conventions. Submit sheets. Details. add our favorites. The time keyboard, just a little bit different. Profile. I'll go back to the details real quick here. There we go. All right. So, just casting off here real quick. So let's look at what we have to do to get this mobile app to you guys. We are going to announce when the mobile app is generally available. Right now, we are in final testing of the app itself and also working through the maintenance schedule for making sure that all of the Journyx cloud sites have the correct version available for you to use the mobile app. It will require a maintenance version, so a bug fix only, essentially some API requirements that will need to be applied to each of your server sites in order to use the new mobile app. So what we'll require then is the versions here that are listed: 11.2.2, 11.5.2, or 12.01. And our IT department is making arrangements to publish the maintenance schedule. However, you guys, for all of you in the Journyx cloud and anybody on-prem who is running an 11.x version or higher, you can request at any time to have these patches applied to your site or request the patch for your on-premise site. So starting now, feel free to talk to your account manager or Journyx support about getting the version that you need to run mobile. If you're on an older version, so if you're on a 10.x or a 9.x, you're going to need to talk to your account manager about upgrading. It shouldn't be a problem, but that process is just a little bit more involved because at that point you are jumping, from an older version to a new feature release, and so you'll want to coordinate with your account manager on the upgrade process. But if you're on an 11.x version, and it's a simple maintenance patch to get your site ready to use the new mobile app. We will be discontinuing support for the current mobile app 11.1 because we want everyone using the new mobile app as it will be the one supported going forward. Another note, everything in our cloud, of course, is SSL enabled. But if you are an on-premise installation, you must have SSL to use the new mobile app. And this is really being pushed by Apple and Android. They don't really support connecting to non-SSL sites any longer. And so this new mobile app will only connect with SSL sites. So I think at this point, we can open up the floor for questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Meredith. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and put those in the questions panel in your GoToWebinar panel there. And also take notice of the handout section in your GoToWebinar panel. There is a PDF about Journyx Mobile 12 that you can download. It's a general overview, and there will be more documentation later upon release. But for right now, that's one piece that you can take away from here. But go ahead and post your questions if you have any, and also if you have any general feedback about the app, we would love to hear that, so you can certainly put that into the questions section as well. So let's see what questions we have. So will the new app show my users timesheet columns and names that are custom made for my company?
Yes, the current the new app does support that. So you saw kind of default names in mine with a 4-column setup, you know, project, activity, pay type, bill type. If you only have 2 or 3, it's only going to show those, and it will show your custom names. So if you don't call it project, you call it, you know, work type, then that's what the end users will see. So it will reflect what they're used to seeing on their own time entry screens.
Okay, thank you. And if you have any questions, you can. There's a questions panel. So if you are raising your hand to ask a question, then I would just ask that you please put those in, type those into the questions panel or into the chat, if that's more accessible to you. And I will ask the questions of Meredith. Next question is, let me see here. Is there a separate charge to use the mobile app?
No, there is no charge for the mobile app, provided you have a licensed time or expense entry user and or a manager who can approve. The fact that you have that, you know, that server account license is all that you need to use the mobile app. So the mobile app is just part of your full solution for Journyx, and there is no separate charge.
Okay. And what is the anticipated release date? We have both cloud and mobile users, so we've held off on testing the cloud website version until mobile is ready. So yeah, a lot of excitement when it's going to be ready. And I think Meredith, you had mentioned some of the things that we're just waiting on right now.
Sure, yeah, so we should be publishing, if not by the end of this week, then early next week, a maintenance schedule for the Journyx Cloud, and that's really what we're dependent upon. We have release candidates for the mobile app itself. It's in final testing, closing out this week. So really, this is all about kind of the maintenance schedule. However, you are welcome to go ahead and talk, you know, if you're ready to go, ready to try things out, you are welcome to go ahead and talk to your account manager about getting your cloud site or your on-prem site, getting that patch for your site so that it'll be ready, so that as soon as mobile publishes, which of course, you know, the mechanics of, you know, the App Store and Google Play is, you know, it may take 24 hours to get to go live. But as soon as mobile is published, if you already have that patch on your site, then you'll be ready to go. So do feel free to ask. If you're wanting to get started quickly, do feel free to ask for that patch from your account manager. And then, of course, like I said, we'll let you know. I anticipate publishing as soon as we have the IT cloud upgrade schedule. So it's imminent. We're in a week to 2 weeks kind of time frame.
Yeah, so just be on the lookout for that announcement, which will come via email, most likely. And if you are opted in to receive our customer newsletter, that will be highlighted there as well. We have no other questions, and so I'd like to thank everyone for attending. Again, thank you for bearing with us last week and coming to our rescheduled webinar. Thank you, Meredith, for showing us what Mobile 12 has to offer. And we will be letting you know very soon when it is available. And in the meantime, the recording of this webinar will be sent out within the next couple of days. Thank you very much, everyone.